Very good. Welcome back. You're watching this check. We're live from Broadcasting House. The first hour is gone, plus 18 minutes. And of course, we were discussing innovation in the tourism industry. Time now to shift gears and talk about how now we can rebuild the SMEs industry after the devastating floods in this country. Most SMEs have been negatively impacted. They have closed shops and sales have gone down. And if something is not done, then we are likely to lose about 35% of all our SMEs that were in operation before the floods. That's a conversation that we are going to have here. Don't you want to know where I got the numbers? I was having a conversation the other day with the PS4 SMEs, and that is what she was telling me. In the not so distant future, the government is going to roll out a concept whereby they're going to advance more credit to SMEs to help them in their recovery efforts. I was telling you about the impact of the floods on the SMEs industry in this country. There is a serious need for us to reconstitute and reconstruct our SMEs industry if we don't want to lose them. I have a team in that studio that is going to help us understand what do we really need to do to save our SMEs industry. We have Mr. William Otieno. He's the director of Partforce. He's joining us. He has been in the SMEs industry for a long time, and so he's going to help us with his wisdom on how to navigate the SMEs industry. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. William Otieno.
Thank you so much.
Very good. And then we have Dennis Liali. He's the chairman of Western Elite Circle. He's also joining us this morning. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Kimani.
And just next to me is Elisha Winga. He's the director of Mentors Africa. He's going to help us understand how do we need to mentor our SMEs so that we can help them get back on their feet. Elisha, asante sana.
Thank you very much.
And I want to start with you. When we talk about mentorship programs, for SMEs and for businesses, a lot of people don't see the point of that. But what is the role of mentorship in driving your business?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. O'Brien, for this opportunity. And just to get straight, first to introduce Mentors Africa and what we basically do. We are a mentorship platform that basically we offer mentorship to the younger generation in terms of in different spheres, and that includes even financial mentorship through our partners. And one challenge that we have, or one gap that is there, especially in the SMEs, is you have young people that have got very brilliant ideas. They've got very powerful ideas, but you realize that there is a gap between the idea and the execution, the implementation. So if you are not mentored in terms of how to make the nitty-gritty decisions, especially navigating through such situations. Yeah. You have got a business where you depend on, you have to make sales every day, you must open every month, and then now 2 weeks or even 3 weeks you're down, a lot is not working. You really need a lot of support, not only financially, but also, psychologically and even in terms of skills and information, so that you can be able to know what can I do and how do I pick up myself and move forward. Yes.
Very well. I want to hear these, from the Western Elite Circle perspective. How has the SMEs been impacted by these floods?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kimani. Yeah, first of all, said the alum this year, they were chairman, and actually, who are we? We stand for, of course, Western Elite Association, and what we do is that we promote togetherness, empowerment, and sustainable development in the Western region, and we have various professionals, senior professionals, say business people. We have people in the government and all other areas, sectors of the economy. And what we do actually is that we are currently working, of course, in the real estate space, building 400 bed-sitter units for students, of course, solving a crisis there. We are also part of the people in the hospitality space. So you asked about the issue of the impact of the floods. Actually, the reality is that for the last 1 month, over 1 month, we have been experiencing a lot of floods, of course, globally, in the United States, Brazil, and of course, Kenya is part of that. And from that, this has caused huge damages in this all over the world and in Kenya, of course, in particular. So when you look at that, what is the impact of that? Number one is that we have seen the issue of destruction of property. And on that, actually, the agriculture sector, which of course I'm also part of, I'm part of the agriculture sector, has been majorly hit. So you have been seeing all over the videos and pictures of crops being actually destroyed, totally destroyed. And that is it. And from the facts is that the agriculture sector itself actually contributes around 33% of our GDP. So you realize that if you're having a situation whereby the agriculture sector is the majorly hit, and 70% of this sector contributing employment in the rural areas and 40% nationally. So you realize that number one is that we're going to have an issue of loss of jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the issue of jobs, we have the issue of the food insecurity. So it's actually estimated that by the next year, we're going to have a very severe food insecurity all over the country. We have also seen the issue of downtime, actually, the issue of disruption of businesses and downtime. So you realize that with that is that you have seen that businesses are actually operating like 5 hours a day. So you realize that you're starting the morning, it's raining, you have to close, then the evening, again, you have to close. So that means that then your income flow, of course, is going again to reduce with that. So that is it. The issue of the impact has been actually very, very, very immense. Yeah.
And I like the fact that you're bringing in the issue of the agriculture sector. I mean, and you've quoted some statistics there which are correct. I mean, for an industry that supports almost 35% of Kenya's GDP, employing almost 70% of the rural workforce, and you know, generating the second, it's the second highest revenue earner in terms of forex, you know, for the country, then it's a critical industry that we need to focus on. And this is what I want to hear from Mr. Otieno. So where do we pick up? I mean, where do we start? Because we must start from somewhere.
Thank you so much. Let me come up from a security perspective, which is my area of expertise. I understand and you understand that security is key. However, in our country, we are rated, I think, the third or the fourth in our budgets. But in reality, we should be first, because each and every one of us should do his or her thing when it's secure. However, we are not there. So when we talk about mentorship and the rest, that one comes in handy. Yeah. That security as a department or security as a trade should be classified and given its due respect and its position, so that each and every one of us puts his security first before we do any other thing. That besides, the other thing I want to talk about on the effects of the flood and the rest of the things. Part4 Security, where I'm working, is a registered security firm within the country. We have businesses almost in about, out of the 47 counties, we can see we proudly talk of 23 counties we have our presence. And so we traject.
That's almost 50%. You know,
yes, we traject and move across the country on issues of security. And so we also understand and know that where are we and what are we supposed to do? We, as people, we give manned guarding, we give alarms, we give dogs and services, and then we also give fire security. So in security industry, we are. But as I said in the opening remark, that we are not classified as such. So you find that the effects of the flood, which we are now talking about, and now the mentorship, which is the next way we need to take, is that, number one, the mentorship should take us to the level that we are classified or recognized. I want to praise that there is a regulatory authority which is coming up with so many ways of doing this, which I want to say is a positive one, and with process, it will help us go to the next level. However, the most important thing that I want to say, and I want to believe, is supposed to be done in this security sector so as to help the SMEs. I think the security sector is employing past 1 million in this country. The security sector is employing past 1 million. And now with the effects of the floods, I know, personally I've not been affected as such, but the floods which raged in Madare, the ones which raged in Kasarani, the ones which raged in any other place like I know the security sector has been affected. Perhaps even some of our security personnel have been swept away. And when they've been swept away, you find that a security person, you might find one security guard is a bread earner for a family. And when he's a bread earner for that family, and then even the African style, we also have other connected lines that I might be a bread earner directly to my family, but there are other people who are relying on me. So in this case, I would request, what I would think, that the government and the authorities which we have in this particular aspect should at least think of putting security where it belongs, and then the necessary trainings and skills which should be given to our people. Like now when we talk about the floods, it would have been very prudent that you now find that the responses are the security teams which are responding to this particular place. There was a video which was going out where some 6 men volunteered and went into the water and rescued a girl who was stuck to a tree somewhere. I think you saw it.
Yeah.
Yes. These are some of the things that the security team should be enabled to be the people to respond and mitigate on such issues. However, because of our classification and where we have been placed, we don't actually have that, because as an individual security firm owner or as an individual security firm director, you find that it is only my resources that I have to put in to run the company, do the necessary things to my team, and do other necessary things in line with the clientele requests and desires as far as the security is concerned. But if we would have had the mentorship, we would have been in a position that whenever a disaster like that comes, a bell is rung and we respond. When we respond as a unit, not individually, but as a security team. Then we classify the teams which have been basically trained and endeavored with the issues of response to disaster. Then we should be the right people to be helping and coming in to assist in such situations.
And you know, these floods, you know, has laid bare, you know, our lack of preparedness and lack of responsive measures when it comes to dealing with disasters. Is it high time then we developed systems and processes whereby SMEs are trained and enlightened on how to respond and how to behave during seasons of disasters?
Very true. It is high time that should have been done, like yesterday, actually. And you know, the SMEs basically is the employer. So many other aspects of the workforce we have in this country are
actually
coming
the
from,
employer, 80%
yes,
of the
are
country's
coming
workforce.
from the SMEs.
Yeah.
So each and every SME should be empowered along its line. Like when he talked about the mentors, when he talks about the agriculture, he talks about the welfare of the finances, I talk about security. We should all be endeavored in our own lines so that whenever something comes which needs his attention, the bell is rung and they are the people who are caught up and they get into that. When it comes to the disaster preparedness and the rest of this thing, basically this is security. We are the people who are supposed to have been enabled by our systems and the governments so that we have the funds. Because basically the most important thing we do not have is the funds. I will not be having 2 people who I have on standby that these are going to respond to these funds. But at the end of the month, I don't have any invoice. I'm sending somewhere. But if we'll be enabled so that I can send an invoice somewhere for these 5 people who are basically trained and left to respond to disaster, we would be at a different level.
I want to hear this from you. I mean, look, so many people are now, you know, suffering mental breakdown. You know, you had your furniture shop, it was swept away by floods. You had your small restaurant, it was flooded, you have to close it down. Apart from giving them, you know, the assurance that we are doing something, how then do we attend to their mental well-being to ensure that they get back to their business in the right state of mind?
Yeah, that's something that is very, very vital, because if I'm to communicate from the humanitarian space, because Mentors Africa, we are an NGO, and I have to commend the amicable job that the humanitarians And a number of NGOs have been able to do, providing blankets, working together with the government and just providing whatever we can be able to do. Now, the next phase, because this person may be, most of the people who have been affected from the, the slums or those areas, or even, let's say, Mayu Mayu. This person, there are people that their lives have completely been distracted or destroyed, and they may never, for example, those who are evacuated from, evicted from their residential areas, that person is not going to go back there. The government has reclaimed that land. And you realize maybe this person was depending on this small business. So first, and the bills are not stopping. The schools are reopening. You have children, they have to go to school. Teachers will ask you for books. There are demands. These children must eat.
Licenses have to be paid.
Licenses have to be paid.
Rent have to be paid.
Rent have to be paid. Taxes are also there with you. So the first thing is the psychological torture. You listen to stories of people and you can't imagine. People are telling stories. Yesterday, I saw a video of expectant mothers. They are in the camps.
Expectant mothers?
Yes, and they're in the camps and they are worried. How will it happen? Because there's a story of this woman. She has got 4 children and she's expecting another one. And now she's here and she does not really know how she's going to manage the whole space because it's a camp and everyone is there. So there is a very dire need for us to begin organizing mental health, sessions. And how can we be able to get to these people as much as we are offering the support currently now? Then number 2, apart from the mental health, is the financial support to start these people off.
Yeah.
How can we be able to provide, small monies to help this person start their businesses back? They've lost their restaurants, they have lost, because the government will not be able to provide food for all these people all the time.
Yeah.
The well-wishers will not continue doing what, Kenyans, we normally come together when there is a calamity, and then after that, people are busy. They'll go back to their lives. So how do we make sure that as we are going back to their lives, we leave these people in a sustainable environment? So there are very serious need for, get more volunteers to offer mental health and just counseling. And number 2, how can you be able now to mobilize funds and be able to help these families start up their lives? We may not take them back to their initial stage, but at least somewhere to get them starting. Yes.
Liali, I mean, the government has announced that it will provide about 10,000 shillings to houses that have been affected by the floods. We are here to get more information and more details about how that is going to be rolled out and, how the houses will be marked up for this. But is it also high time that we started thinking about how we're also going to come up with packages that will help SMEs?
Yeah, it's a very high time, of course. And one of those packages you're talking about is the insurance aspect. We have realized that now it's high time to insure our businesses, and so that when there is the shocks coming in, you are well prepared with a product that can actually be able to cover you. And actually, if you look at the data, you realize that in Kenya, the insurance penetration is only 2.25%. So what does that tell you? It tells you that as a country, we are not prepared for uncertainties. So it's a good area that we need to invest in. We also need to engage, actually, as part of really planning in advance, is actually part of the training that he has mentioned. People have to be prepared for those uncertainties. People have to always save. So that is a way that they need to actually plan for the future. Yeah, it's part of actually the risk mitigation strategies that they need to be in.
You see, in 1945, after the World War II, in 1948, the US Congress passed the European Marshall Plan, which was anchored on 4 areas, to help rebuild the war-torn regions of Europe, to remove trade barriers in Europe, to modernize industries and improve European prosperity. that plan is credited with driving the prosperity of Europe and helping Europe, which was completely tattered by wars, to come back on its feet. Is it high time, Mr. Otieno, that we think about coming up with our own Marshall Plan that will help the SMEs in this country get back on their feet, and not just getting back on their feet, but get back and flourish?
I believe it is high time that should have been done, and it should be an in-house. It should be an inbuilt, something that we do ourselves. However, it's something that we can do ourselves when we are guided. And that is where the word mentorship, as we put it, or the reason why we're talking about mentorship on the post-flood, is supposed to be coming in handy. We have our government, we have our organizations like myself who in security. We have PROSAC, which is an organization which we are all following, and several security companies. We need to come up with such a thing. We start it at our level, then put it up. You know, as a security entity, Mr. Liai has talked about insurance. Us, we cannot operate without insurance. If we try operating without insurance, basically, we will not even have the business. Because any client...
It's actually a legal requirement.
Yes. Any client you're talking about will ask you, are you insured? Before I give you my business, are you insured? So we have the insurance. However, that individual insurance is not enough. If in any case we can pull in together, so that then little I do, the little the other person do, the little the other person does, we pull in together our funds. And these funds are now supposed to be used to bring in the mitigation plans, so that in event that there is a problem, we have a fallback. That we can say so and so has been affected in this direction. Those who are affected on this level can be assisted on this level. The ones who are affected on this level can be assisted. And we do it all with ourselves. And then our systems can also come in to cap in. They put in some more funds so that it can be a big basket that can help us regenerate and recuperate from wherever we have been taken and move to a level that we can restart ourselves and move on.
And I want to pick, for example, the case of Texas. I mean, it has undergone very severe flooding, you know, in the last 2 weeks. And we have seen the governor of Texas. I mean, of course, you know, you can't compare Kenya and Texas. I mean, Texas is a wealthy American state. It's 100 times, you know, wealthier than Kenya. But there are some few lessons that we can learn, you know, from how they have managed to deal and to respond to the issues of flooding in Texas. And we have seen Greg Abbott, you know, coming up with a package that will help, you know, affected businesses, small businesses, you know, get back on their feet. This is in form of grants. And so, I mean, we may sit back and say, hey, wait a minute, I mean, you're talking about Texas, you know, it's a wealthy state. But even us, in a small ways, and I want to hear this from Liali, then what kind of rescue packages should we develop, you know, for our SMEs to help them get back in the shortest time possible?
Yeah, of course, you mentioned about Houston, of course, that is Texas, and how they have reacted to that. So we also have to address this. Remember, we had just COVID just recently. And how did the government tackle that? We have the issue of, and of course, this is what we're supposed to do, some of the packages, when the government having, of course, a fund that can be able then to support those people who are actually, who have been affected. So number one is having in place a good government fund, of course, with the partners from various places. Of course, we have the World Bank and others, so that can help them. Another package, of course, can be in form of what we talked about, the issue of training. So this business
somebody might say that we have the Hustlers Fund.
Yes.
Is that enough?
No, that's not enough because of the size. We're talking about the size of the funds. Hustler Fund, most of the Kenyans average, they should be getting around 500 as their limit. You know, you have a limit. So of course, I'm not saying that it's a very good fund that is really helping in the development of this country, but we need something that is substantive. I mean, something significant.
Should be like how much?
Of course, the amount of 20,000 should be sufficient. I'm talking at that bearing in mind that I said that our country, most of the people are in the SMEs, 40%, right? So that one should be able to help someone. For example, if your crops were destroyed, should be able to get some fertilizer and getting feed, to your feet, and even those who are having those small shops. So I talked about the issue of another package. It's not just in terms of money, but in terms of talked about training. They also need to be taught about how to diversify their businesses. You know, when you have a diversified portfolio in the business world, is that when the shocks are coming, they might not affect all the areas that you have invested in. Yeah, so that is it. The issue of diversification, very crucial for this. For these businesses, and those are some of the. And then also another thing is that I talked about the issue of banks also. You know, we're just talking about government, but government cannot, as Jeff Kennedy said, of course, government cannot do everything for us. So we have the issue of the Kenyans themselves. How can they be able to tap into the external capital? I'm talking about the issue of the loans. You know, we have banks that offer good loans at affordable rates. So it's a matter of that package, then the government being able to partner also, work with these banks, you know, and other lenders, then being able to tell them that, can you actually be able to access credit to these people who have been deeply affected by this, the impact of the flood. So it's on those lines that we need to really focus ourselves on.
Very good. I mean, if you're just joining us, we're having a good conversation on how to revive, how to revitalize, and how to reconstruct the small and medium enterprises. And speaking statistically, 80% of jobs in Kenya are supported by SMEs. That's right. And in terms of their contribution to the country's wealth, you're talking about 40% of the country's wealth is generated by SMEs. And so you're talking about a critical mass that the country cannot survive without. I want to take you back to the year 2009. You know, the country was smarting from the post-election violence, and then after that, we got into a devastating drought. Yes. And that's when, you know, people came up with the concepts like the Kenya Sisi kwa Sisi initiative and so much. But there was one initiative that was a game changer, and that was the Economic Stimulus Package, ESP. It did wonders. It helped communities to rebuild their industries through, you know, the providence of fertilizer, of small equipment, you know, like you know, welding machines, fishing ponds, and so much. And that package, or that program, is credited with helping SMEs in Kenya get back on their business, on their feet. Should we think about developing this kind of a concept in 2024? That is the conversation that we are having here. This is BizCheck. We're in the company of these gentlemen who are helping us wade through this conversation. And I want to hear things from Mr. Winger. Look, I mean, you're talking about how to mentor, you know, our small businesses, you know, and how to help them, you know, navigate this kind of shocks in the future. So who should lead this kind of a concept? Is it the government or the private sector?
To be very honest, I just want to pick it from the point you're building on, you know, the economic stimulus package. And you've also mentioned something on how Texas and how US have dealt with the same situation. And if you look at the context, the difference is not resources. The difference is the people, the systems that these people have developed.
Yeah.
And if you look at our scenario, you've given a history of, you know, calamity. So whatever we are going through, we are all born in Kenya. We understand the history of where we are coming from. It's not the first time we are going through a flood.
It's not the last time.
And it's not the last time.
Let's hope it's not.
Are you getting? But the problem with us is we never learn. And if we learn, we just act for that time. And we don't put structures going forward. I can assure you that after this, we are seeing the government, people are running up and down. After everything has settled, no, everything.
We go back to default setting.
We go to default setting and we don't take actions. And sometimes we even set up commissions, then we find the reports and we do not act on them. So just to give a response to your question, who should lead the way? We need to have an organized government that has got, you know, a goodwill and leadership that is organized and is visionary. Because the government has got one big responsibility, policy formulation. They have to formulate the policies and then invite these other organizations to come on board. For example, from our, you know, from an NGO or our non-governmental organizations sector, there are limitations that we cannot go. There are limitations that we cannot, you know, we cannot surpass. There are areas that we cannot be able to operate on. We cannot formulate policies. We can only give proposals. We can maybe just petition or give proposals. So it has to start from the government. And we have to be very honest and say, you people, this has happened to us, and it should not be like this over and over.
So, and you know, I like the fact that you're bringing in the idea of, you know, the collaboration between the private and the public sector. And the two of them must play what we call a complementary role, because each one of them, you know, has a different role to play, and each one of them, you know, fits somewhere. And so I want to hear this from Liali. So how then do we build that partnership, bearing in mind that time is not on our side? We are talking about a disaster that has impacted thousands, if not millions of people. And if we don't act, then we are likely to lose so many businesses. And who knows what will happen next?
Yeah, the issue of fusion integration, of course, between the government and the private sector, of course, that's a very critical space that has to be explored. And you say that, you rather talked about having a very immediate plan that this can happen. I talked about the issue of, the immediate plan is the issue of, for example, the loans that I talked about. If these banks can be able, the government can work with the banks to actually access this credit to the, to various SMEs, then that can be very great. So that's how this partnership has to be rolled out. And then another area actually to really explore in the immediate term is about various businesses, actually the private sector. We have those, and the private sector you have businesses that are able, we say that they are good in terms of the cash flow and the rest. Just the way we handled with COVID, you used to see various companies coming up and saying, I'm going to actually donate this to this and that, right? So this private sector, and we have good umbrella bodies, KEPSAs and all those, they can be able to come and say, we are putting up a package as the private sector to go and actually support this business. So that is how then they are going to be able to work with the government, because we said government cannot work in isolation. And of course, as the private sector, we are still the government ourselves. So it's a way that we need to really act very fast. So the other things like trying to work with them mentally and all that, and that's why we have various organizations that are actually working. The issue of mentorship, a very critical space. You know, even if you cannot give me even 1,000 shillings, but you can be able to talk to me that it shall be well, then that's a good way. So that's how I'm just looking at highlighting the issue of the government actually partnering with actually the private sector. The government has good plans that are going on, and we are very, of course, pleased with them. Actually, it's just a matter of increasing the intensity of how they are doing their things. But it's just a matter of them being able to work with the other players.
Other players in the industry.
Yeah, sure.
You know, because I can see we're almost winding up this conversation. I want to hear this from Otieno. So what lessons do you think we ought to learn from the ongoing calamity that we are finding ourselves in that should prepare us on how we're supposed to respond in the future?
Several lessons, but the most important lesson we need to learn is, I want to put it at individual level. It should start individually. Before we take it to the next level of the organization or even to the government, each and every one of us should be organized to himself and learn a lesson. Like when we had the floods of Madare, people were swept away when they were in their houses. We don't learn our lessons, and you will find that when the rain subside, we will be building again on those riverbanks. And then, when the rains come again, we will be here shouting at our top of voices, the government should do us something. Which, of course, if we really learned our lessons and did not go back to the banks, before, like now, the rains we are talking about today and the floods we have witnessed have gone a notch higher. They've gone a notch higher. Because we've had some floods and the rest, but they've not gone to this level. Like within this week, I saw Nyando. When you see Nyando, the water is now going over the bridge.
River Nyando?
Yes, in Ahero. And the distance, which in normal distance is always higher than this building, where the water is always and where the bridge is always. And this time around, water came up to the extent that it was going above the bridge. Those lessons we should mitigate by our individual personalities. The government should only come in to subsidize, giving directions. And the government should come in because the government is the custodian of almost all the lands. They should set aside places where they, like now, in Nyando, these are the places where we normally have floods. If an individual person cannot do this, but the government is able to have been having a place where they set in tents, they prepare. Once the meteorological are stocked and they see the trends are coming in, something is done. That one can only be done by the government. But our individual levels, we need also to be careful to the extent that we don't get back to these problems. In Mukuru, there was a clip which has been going on in the country where the systems are talking about there is no more demolition, there is no more this. And then the next day, people are coming in and saying, my certificate of children, birth certificate, all whatever we had have been demolished. And so you see, such type of lessons should be learned by individuals.
Very good.
And even the people who are building these particular houses should be regulated and put aside that we do not accept this. But that one now is the government which can do.
Very good.
But we should start from our individual aspects and capacities.
I mean, gentlemen, we must come to the close of this conversation. I mean, time is always flying very fast when we are having fun, and of course when we are having great conversation. But we hope that we have learnt our lessons. We're going to pick up the pieces and run and rebuild ourselves. Your time is highly appreciated, gentlemen. We look forward for more of these kind of conversations. I mean, this is, of course, an ongoing issue. Otherwise, enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
Which is in about 2 minutes from now. Asante sana. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Well, rebuild, reconstruct, and of course recapacitate. That is what we need to do, even as we look forward to how we are going to rebuild our SMEs. You've been watching 2 hours of solid conversation. We started with the tourism industry, but now coming to a close on how to capacitate SMEs. My name is O'Brien Kimani. We're taking you back to Naivasha, where the memorial service for the floods victim is taking place.